Welcome to the third video tutorial on the cardiovascular system. So if you haven't watched the previous one, which I was describing or explained the conduction system of the heart, that was the overview of what really happens within the heart. I was describing that the SA node is a pacemaker cells which generate an action potential. But today we are going to discuss on what really happens at cellular level. How does SA node manage to generate this action potential? So whenever you're asked a question to describe the pacemaker action potential, we actually want to investigate more about how does the SA node manage to generate this electrical impulse or an action potential which will cause depolarization, hence leading to contraction. Now, if you look at this graph, we have the membrane potential here, which is in millivolts, and we have time. So we plot membrane potential against time. Okay, everything will make sense. Time, we are only going to concentrate from 0 up to 0.8 seconds. This is a complete cycle of the pacemaker action potential. At this level, then the electrical impulse is no longer active. It needs to be generated. So these are two repeating units of the curve that the action potential is actually generated by SA node. But if we describe up to 0.8, then we've described the pacemaker action potential. So the first thing that you must know is that pacemaker action potential, we just want to look at what ions are involved to cause the depolarization, hence leading to contraction. So the most important thing you must know is that the resting membrane potential of the pacemaker cells, the SA node, is around negative 60 millivolts. When it is at this point, it is at rest, meaning there is no activity that is happening. Remember, refer to the resting membrane potential of the neuron of a nerve. We said it's negative 70 millivolts. At that point, nothing is happening. We also are going to describe the pacemaker, the action potential of the myocardium. The myocardium muscle of the heart is around negative 90 millivolts. These are important MCQ questions in the medical physiology that you must know. So what happens is that at negative 60, there is actually nothing happening. The cell is at rest around negative 60. But what really happens is that the phases we are going to describe is actually the first phase. Okay, we are going to describe this phase and then we are going to describe this phase. So we can say that for us to move from negative 60 to go around negative 40, we call that initial depolarization or spontaneous depolarization. You can see the threshold. So this line is the threshold. So when we reach around negative 40, it means that now the cell can cause an overshoot, depolarization, and eventually repolarization. Okay. So initially, there is just, we call this spontaneous depolarization. Why? Because there is the um, uh, inward or slow movement of sodium inside the cell. But this sodium movement is not um, is not extreme. So the sodium movement is not extreme because the movement is actually by the funny channels. So it's not enough to cause an overshoot. It will just shift this membrane potential maybe from negative 60 to around negative 50 somewhere. Okay. So around -50, there is another type of calcium that open. This now, it is the calcium channel. So we call this T-type calcium channel. Even it is not enough to cause depolarization. So we call these graded potentials. We want them to be put together so that at the end of the day, we can have depolarization. Okay. So around -50, the T-type calcium channels open, but they are not enough to reach this threshold. Then at around -40, there is another type of calcium channel that open. We call this L type of calcium channel. L type of calcium channel is a bit rapid. Okay, is a bit rapid. It allows a lot of sodium to enter inside the cell, moving this membrane potential to around -40 millivolts, and this is the threshold. Once the threshold is reached, then spontaneous generation stops. So that was phase 4. Phase 4, I said spontaneous generation. We always start with phase 4 here. Okay. Then from phase 4, we go to phase 0. Phase 0, as you can see that the graph is spiking here. So phase 4 is actually depolarization. What happens depolarization? Remember, the L-type calcium channels open at the end of phase 4 that we are from describing. The L-type calcium channels, I said that they are a bit rapid. They opened at the end of stage 4. But at this point, they remain opened. So calcium can rush more inside the cell, moving this membrane potential to about +20. That's why there is this depolarization. Okay. So from there, the these channels which opened in phase 4, the funny channel which was allowing sodium to enter slowly, as well as the T-type calcium channels which are not enough to cause depolarization, they tend to close during phase 0. So this red region, we call it phase 0. The first one, phase 4, then phase 0. Okay. So these channels which opened in phase 4 at the beginning, they tend to close here. And guess what? This one is dropping. It's called repolarization. Depolarization is named phase 3. What really happens in repolarization is that there is there is slow inward movement of there is opening of potassium voltage gated channels. Once the potassium voltage gated channels, remember potassium movement is always outside the cell. So potassium voltage gated channels, once they are open, they allow potassium to leave the cell, meaning we are returning this membrane potential to rest. Remember, the rest is -60. Since calcium is leaving and it is making inside the cell more negative, we are returning back. Remember at this point, what happens to the EL type calcium channel, what will happen during phase 0 is that they will cross. At this point, they will cross. Okay? So this is all about the pacemaker action potential. We only have 3 major phases. Phase 4, that is we call spontaneous depolarization. Then now the depolarization that will come due to opening of L-type calcium channel. Then there is potassium leaving the cell causing repolarization. Sometimes they refer this to as the hyperpolarization, but I would prefer that you use repolarization. Then again, remember in the beginning, I said in spontaneous depolarization. At this point, there is actually zero influx of sodium pre-potentials before the action potential is reproduced through what? The fan channels as well as the T-type calcium channels. But it is not enough, as I mentioned, to produce depolarization. If you mention these phases, then you would have done with what pacemaker potential is all about. Remember, if you found this video helpful, try to subscribe and like the video so that you continue supporting me. Thank you very much. Sorry, sir.